You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-host, Kevin. Kevin, how we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Another Tuesday. Get to hang out with you, talk a little football here in the slower part of the year, right? Not that there's nothing going on, but definitely the slower part of the year. But no, man, we are now that we are past the combine, we are also past the franchise tag deadline, and what we got free agency next, right? So we got some roster moves. We had a trade that was fantasy relevant here this past week. So obviously we'll touch on those things and kind of keep marching forward here and until we get to free agency and really see how some teams are wanting to address needs or fill some gaps in their rosters here.
Absolutely. Yeah, certainly can be a bit of an interesting thing there, right? When it comes down to how that kind of looks and works, and all of that. With I don't know your thoughts on this one, but when it came down to this year's combine, it seemed a little bit more lackluster than years past, right? Like, you typically we are anyway. It seems like in years past we've had those maybe a handful of guys that really stood out and really, came to shine and definitely did something to drastically improve their draft stock. We've started seeing all of these kind of top guys start opting out of doing anything other than, whiteboard work and interviews with the teams. And kind of save everything for their pro days. But this year, it really wasn't a deal where there was like that clear-cut guy that seemed to have emerged from this year's combine that had everybody kind of looking at it and go, oh my, like, you started really seeing draft stock rise. Like, so this one here, the combine seemed very kind of lackluster to me. And really didn't have some of the same kind of oomph that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I would agree. There wasn't necessarily a couple defensive players really showed out, right? But nothing that we would look at. Nothing that we would look at fantasy wise. The running backs who ran pretty quickly. Like, again, Jeremiah Love cemented himself as the 101 in rookie drafts.
Yeah.
I mean, no question about it. And it doesn't matter where he goes. Jeremiah Love did a great job. Honestly, I thought someone who had a pretty good combine was his counterpart, Jadarian Price. It's kind of weird seeing both guys at least test so well. He didn't necessarily have as much of the straight line speed, but he was explosive. Like his broad jump and his high jump were really impressive. So the explosiveness is there. But yeah, nothing that shocked the world necessarily. We had 3 sub 4.3 40-yard times. And that's always kind of flashy, right? So Brendan Thompson from Mississippi State, Lorenzo Styles, who did kind of he got a bunch of the accolades on the defensive side, right?
Right.
From Ohio State, and then Xavier Thomas from LSU. So again, those are always blazing fast, right? It's fun to see. Deion Burks, your boy from Oklahoma, ran a 4.3 flat.
Yep.
So we did see a good amount of speed, and we're 4.4 used to be the target, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, okay, how close can they get to 4.4? We have, I'm not even running a list here, Derek, but it looks like we had almost 15, 18 guys run sub 4.4.
Yeah, I'm trying to count that up now.
Including a tight end, guys. Including a tight end. Kenyon Sadek from Oregon, blazing fast. We're going to see how that gets used in the NFL, right? Because again, tight end position is asked to do so much, especially in the NFL.
Right.
How that translates over. But holy smokes, being able to split him offline against a linebacker and then having him run right up the seam in a cover 2 situation.
Right.
That's going to be kind of cool, right? Teams are going to be able to utilize that to some extent. Well,
Right.
we'll see how it goes, but
by my count, it looked like there was 22 players that ran
okay.
underneath
Okay.
that ran 4.39 or better. Which I was a little surprised how many safeties ran as quickly as they did, right? Like typically when you're talking on the 40-yard dash, it's typically your wide receivers and your cornerbacks. That's where you see these guys really kind of showcase and show out. Maybe every once in a while you see a running back with some blazing speed. But for the most part, that is a kind of a deal that's seemingly kind of just been owned by the wide receiver and cornerback position. But this year there was safety ran the second fastest 40 with a 2.47. Like that is insane, right? Another safety out of Oklahoma, Robert Spears Jennings ran a 4.32. Trade-in Stukes out of Arizona is another safety, ran a 4.33. And quite frankly, there was only one cornerback that was faster than those last two safeties at a 4.32. So, very interesting to see how that has kind of changed here over the course of things.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder. Makes you wonder how the NFL is going to play this,
right?
Just as far as just going forward, right? And you knew that that's where the league was trending, with it being more pass oriented. You want guys being able to get deep in coverage and those deep routes being able to make up ground and get back in a hurry. So it's there, like you can see the makings of the running back coming back into play in the NFL. You can see it. I don't know that's quite there yet, but as these linebackers and safeties, particularly, right, the people in the box, in the second and third level, as they lose the mass to be able to have the speed to deal with tight ends, wide receivers, coming out and running so many of these deep routes, the running game eventually is going to come back in a larger capacity than what we've seen it. I'm never going to tell you that's going back to, the 80s or the 90s.
Yeah.
Even
the very early,
right?
Yeah, I don't even know that we'll see it hit kind of those early 2000s. Like I don't think we'll see that come back even.
Yeah. So it's just something to be mindful of, right? Here in the next few years. Like, what does this look like for running backs who are honestly built like a Bijan? Jeremiah Love's another guy who's just kind of built, he's a big dude. Now he's blazing fast, but he's just a big dude. Like, how many guys are gonna, fall off of him as he gets through the hole here a little bit? So, right. Cool to see, right? Being able to, acknowledge some of those trends. Again, we're still a couple years away, but still really cool to see. But some again, a tight end with the biggest vertical jump, right? Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt. A quarterback was number 2 on that list. Quarterback had the second highest of people who tested. I realize not everyone tested, but Traylon Green, like
And Traylon Green was
Interesting.
another guy that had a blazing fast 40. I think he was a 4.36.
Hmm. Yeah, so it'll be he's gonna put on a roster. The dude did well enough in the combine that there will be an NFL team that takes a shot on him as a developmental project,
Right.
regardless of how he shows at his pro day, because I don't think he threw.
No, and you look at the stats that he put up in college. They weren't overly impressive stats, right? Like completion percentage, yardage, like none of those things were overly impressive. Touchdown to interception ratio wasn't overly impressive. So you're right. This is a project, but from an athletic standpoint, he's a guy that may have done enough to get there, right? But yeah, and I guess kind of going back to that kind of full circle on where I kind of led or started that off with, that not seeing somebody really kind of stand out, right? Like it was the combine that got Anthony Richardson drafted as a top 5 draft pick. I think he went number 4 overall in that draft, but it was the combine that did that, because you saw the size, you saw the strength, you saw the speed, you saw just the overall athleticism, and that seemed to have propelled him up and into that kind of deal. We haven't had anybody like that in this year's combine kind of propel themselves up and into that kind of conversation to it. Also makes you wonder how much of this is these guys really have been training for these events, for that, right? And so you're able to shave some time off, you're able to get a few more reps in, you're able to increase some of these things with some of that targeted training that they're doing, that while all of this stuff is kind of football adjacent, and it has you can kind of see how it could translate to the game, doesn't necessarily translate to the game because it's not actual gameplay. So it would be interesting. It'll be interesting to see too how much of this changes when we start seeing these guys on the field in in pro day or in rookie mini camps as well as training camp.
Yeah. No, exactly. One of the things that again, not completely, but does semi translate over is some of these quarterbacks decided to throw. Some did well for themselves.
Right.
Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller, and Carson Beck all threw and did very well for themselves. Drew Aller looks the part of a quarterback. He always has. He looked that way in high school. He had a 5-star rating going to Penn State. He looked that way at Penn State, and then it just kind of fell. Like it just, he's never produced the way he physically looks like he should be able to. So it'll be interesting to see how NFL teams kind of balance that out when they have the tape versus the physical performance, if you will, just of the athlete. I think Carson Beck had a really good show when he was throwing. We'll see how the pro day goes for him again, but I thought he looked really good. Honestly, I would tell you the satisfaction I got was seeing Diego Pavia like dirt his first pass
Right.
against air, throwing it 3 yards out of bounds. Now he recovered and he looked better after that, but that first pass just whoop, I was like, that's karma, buddy. Like I'm interested to see how NFL teams treat him now that we've kind of seen his true personality come out when he doesn't get his way. And Pavia is short. Like he looked miniature standing alongside the rest of the quarterbacks, some of the coaching staff that was around there, all the wide receivers. Like he looks tiny. So we'll see. Height doesn't always have to mean one thing or the other, right? Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, like we've seen shorter quarterbacks who have had some success. So there's not saying that you have to look the stereotypical, 6'2" to 6'5" and, laser rocket arm or a scrambling ability that's out of this world. But typically when you don't have the big arm or the legs to propel you mentally, you have to be better than everybody else. And I think we've already seen, at least right now, Javi is not mentally at, what I would say optimal performance for an NFL franchise.
Yeah, I
So,
think it's certainly going to be a bit of a project there, right? And this is a draft class that, right? It's kind of the the thought very much is that Mendoza goes number 1 to the Raiders, right? Like, again, this is an NFL draft class at the QB position that I don't think is overly strong. Um, yeah, this is one that Mendoza ended up winning the Heisman, having numbers that probably wouldn't even have gotten him in the conversation um in previous years. Right? Like, take out the fact that it was that he was the leader of the best team in the country, right? They proved that when they won the national championship and played their way through the playoffs and just kind of dominated throughout. And yeah, there was a lot of other years that those stats probably wouldn't have even had him as a finalist.
absolutely. I mean,
So,
pick any one of the Oklahoma Heisman winners,
right.
any one of them.
Mm-hmm. And Jalen Hurts would have, he ended up going against Joe Burrow in that historic season, right? But like, Jalen Hurts numbers were far better across the board than what we saw in Mendoza, and
Yeah.
that was
Well, and again, the kid seems to have a good head on his shoulders, right? Like
right.
he's
The
well spoken. Like he has been coached up to be in front of the media and do
mm,
well, right? He's not
right.
going to bury anybody. He's not giving clipboard material. Like
The intangible
he,
certainly seemed to be there.
yeah, exactly. So again, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe he was IU. I think IU came into the season and they weren't trying to. They did not have a passing mindset, right? Like, I think that's part of the beauty that made IU so damn good this year is yes, they had 40 players on their roster older than the NFL average age right now. Like they were leaps and bounds more developed as far as just reps in college than any team that they faced. But that was to their benefit. So good on them. I mean, they made the most of it. But I think mentally he'll be able to do it. And if he goes to Las Vegas, what a I'm choking saying this because it's the Raiders, but what a dream scenario for any young quarterback if Tom Brady is going to be anywhere involved
Right.
to be able to sit down and pick his brain like how did you handle this? What was your mindset? And just being able to soak it in, you know, just be a dream come true, I could only imagine for most, if not all of these quarterbacks coming out. It's like, holy crap, like I get to go and I get to sit down and talk X's and O's with Brady. And it's not always just a phone call, like he's going to be in the building and he's going to be, around a little bit and we can just have this one-on-one time or classroom time, whatever it looks at. But so it's like I got nothing against Mendoza. Like, so I hope it works for him unless it's against the Broncos. Like,
Right.
I hope Denver beats the brakes off of him. But other than that, like I got nothing against the kid. I hope he shows well.
Right. So, I mean, but yeah. So this quarterback class, this one is going to be, I think, a little bit more of a defensive class than maybe some previous years, right? Yeah, there's certainly some good skill position players out there, but yeah, this is one that I do think we're going to see a lot more. Yeah, probably look back and be happier with the defensive players that ultimately came out of this draft class more so than some of the skill positions and some of that. So it'll be
For
interesting to see
sure.
how things shake out here in about a month and a half. But
I do think this quarterback class is better than what we saw last year, though.
yes, but again, I think it pales in comparison to some of the previous year's
Oh,
classes that we've
yeah, a
had.
couple years
So
ago, right? With obviously the Burrow glass draft class, the Josh Allen draft class. I mean, with Daniels and Knicks and that crew, right, that
Mhm.
went 2 years ago, like, there's definitely been better ones, but, I mean, I if I had to look into a crystal ball, I would tell you there's gonna be 3 quarterbacks that go in the first round.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think there's just enough needy teams that they're gonna want that 5th year.
Right. Well, there's enough needy teams out there too that we're gonna see some silliness, I think, happen here in the next couple of weeks through free agency. Right. Like we've had I think we'll see some quarterbacks signed to some deals that leave people scratching their heads when it's all said and done, right? Um, kind of a perfect segue, unless you've got some more to talk about on
Nope,
the
I was thinking the exact same thing.
awesome. So kind of that perfect segue to move on and talk about some of the free agency and the franchise tag, right? Franchise tag deadline was today. So we know who's been tagged, who has not been tagged, and what that's looking like. Kind of running down, were there any big head scratchers out there for you or any surprises when it came to the franchise tag or who wasn't tagged?
Um, I I was I think I was mildly curious why the Seahawks didn't try and transition tag at least Kenneth Walker and see what people were going to be offering him and at least give themselves the opportunity to have last right of refusal.
Right.
Um,
And potentially get a
coming off the
contender.
Super
Yeah.
Bowl, they have plenty of cap space, so I didn't feel like that was going to be an issue for them. But to just decide not to and let him walk, I find that to be a little interesting.
Especially after he just won a Super Bowl MVP for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the transition tag for, Daniel Jones, I think at least makes sense for Indianapolis, right? For that very reason, like, they don't have to pay him. I think it saves them, like, 6 or 7 million instead of franchise tagging, they transition tagged him. So I think that saved them a little bit and at least allows them to have half a foot in the door
Right.
if they can come to terms and bring them all the way back, but it sounded like they weren't very close, and I think I understand that, right? Daniel's team is trying to say, "Well, look, this is what we were doing. We were, 8-3 or whatever as the starter, and look at these numbers we had for you guys." And the coach looking at it going, "Yeah, but that was, 12 games. Like, look at these other, 25 games he started. Like,
Right.
you
And this
still
is
have
after coming off of
you
an Achilles.
Yeah, you still have a deficit, and now we have this injury, and we're gonna be spending time in rehabbing, and does he come back, and is he still mobile, and all these other things, so, yeah, injuries going into free agency for any player are always difficult. It makes it more challenging for the agent. You just don't have quite as much negotiating power, but nevertheless, transition tag there, okay, fine. The Jets, I think the Jets franchise tag Breece Hall to save face.
Right.
Like, I really do. Like, I think 4 years ago, the Jets, on paper, had a really good draft, and everyone expected that to really turn around the franchise. And 2 of the 3 guys had been traded away before this point, and then the Jets were looking around going, we're gonna lose this. Like, we know we don't have a quarterback at the moment, but if we don't have a running back either, like, then who's our face? Like, is it Garrett Wilson? Okay, maybe. Like, is it someone on the defensive side? Well, we got rid of Sauce, we got rid of Johnson, we got rid of oh shoot,
Williams.
who's Williams? Like, where are we going here? And so I think they franchise tagged Brees to save face. So my assumption, my assumption is that this is going to be a 1 year deal, and then we'll see Brees Hall enter free agency next year.
Right.
Um, but that remains to be seen. But other than that, I wouldn't say surprises. Like, we knew the Cowboys were talking about Pickens. Okay, fine. Like, that one's not a surprise.
We knew last
Again,
week about Pitts, so
yep. And then
Hendricks not getting tagged wasn't that big of a shock after what they couldn't get done in last offseason and then the production this season. But yeah, I'm with you. I think the biggest shock was the fact that you Kenneth Walker just managed to head right into free
Walk
agency
out the door.
after being MVP of the Super Bowl, right? Like, the most interesting thing there is, right, like, this was one of those that you and I got talking, before last season. We really thought that Kenneth Walker would have, a career year this past year with that Kubiak scheme and how they kind of, that zone read and that zone run scheme. Um, and Zach Charbonnet was just kind of the thorn in the side, and then running through training camp, like, there was things coming out that Zach Charbonnet was going to be the guy. Um, yeah, he gets hurt, and Kenneth Walker really explodes like many of us had predicted he would had he actually had that job all year. But just makes you wonder what's kind of going on behind the scenes, to the point where Seattle was not necessarily wanting to utilize him in a role that seemed, drawn up for him and seemed like a perfect scheme and perfect fit, to then, being a Super Bowl MVP, and you let that walk out of your building, not even a month after winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it just shows, right? Like Clint is not the same as his dad, and that's okay, right? But
Right.
his dad was a workhorse guy. Now the NFL was a little bit more into that phase than
Mhm.
what it is currently, because Clint is now talking about taking that same approach into Vegas, right? And that they want to bring another running back beside Genty, and to be able to kind of split that up. And fantasy owners don't want to hear that. You're just going, crap. Like, it looked so good for all of 3 days until Clint Kubiak opened his mouth and said that. And then everybody's going, son of a gun. Like, but the Giants are talking about that too, right? Scadaboo's coming off the injury, but they want to, have, bring in another back and do whatever. Like, we see it so much around the league that it's just it's just that moment that we're in. There are so few teams that truly have an alpha. And regardless of, I think we would all be a little remiss if we didn't take that into consideration when we're drafting these guys, right? Like, you can get the alpha, and because they are the sole alpha, then you're able to get their handcuff for really cheap, right? Later in
Right.
the draft. Um, but our options are limited, right? It's James Cook, it's Saquon Barkley, it's Bijan Robinson, it's Jameer Gibbs, Devon Achan. Like, really, because of everything that if he's staying healthy like he has the last 2 years, he has shown that he can be an alpha. He just catches more passes, right? And goes through that. Jonathan Taylor's another one. It was Derrick Henry until this past season, and now that's in flux a little bit, as he's going to be 32, I believe, this upcoming season.
Right.
So, I mean, what, 5, 6 guys? That's it.
Yeah.
Everybody else is splitting it somehow, right? You thought it was going to be Genty. It's not. Like, Christian McCaffrey's probably the other one
Right.
that I need to add in there. But other than that, like, we started to see the split in LA, right? Where Sean McVay had kind of really been a one running back guy. We started to see that split
Right.
um, between Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. So it's not there anymore. Kubiak's talking about doing it to Genty in Vegas, so it's not going to be that team. I mean, we saw it last year in New York with the Jets, right? Brees Hall and Allen. We're splitting a little too much. We're splitting carries a bit too much, and it slowed down Brees Hall's fantasy impact. So we're seeing all over the league, all over. And so, those 5, 6 guys, I mean, they should be going at least in the top 8 of running backs, just because they're guaranteed all this work.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see too, right? Like, some of those guys that you mentioned will be having different offensive coordinators, different head coaches, different schemes coming into play next year. So um, it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out, and do we see a shift and a change yet again for some of those guys, right? Like, just because they really looked like the part last year, right? regime change doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see that happen again. So this is one of those that it's going to come down to really paying attention to to the talk coming out of mini camps and training camps, and really starting to dig into what the beat writers are saying, and the words that are floating out of training camp, and what that looks like preseason as well. So there's a lot more questions, I think, going into that than even coming into last year.
Absolutely. So, and again, that's the good part about free agency. Like, we'll get to see where some of this at least shine some light on, right? What teams are really going to be going after running back, what their rooms look like even before they start, getting some of these offers out. We start hearing where players are signing. So it's exciting. It's a little frustrating as a fantasy owner, right? From that aspect. But I mean, the more weapons you have, the more comfortable you feel about having success. So from a fan standpoint and just an X's and O's standpoint, yeah, you know, why load everything up into one when you could, when you can have a double barreled shotgun instead of, single pump. Like, it's just kind of one of those things.
On some other news, that the Bears are going to be in search for a center, right? Their Pro Bowl center retired earlier today, right? After
Saw
5
that,
seasons.
yeah.
Yep. So happy trails to Drew Dahlman. And best of luck going forward there, right? The Cardinals, we were talking last week where it was the Cardinals GM had come out and said, "Oh yeah, I've been in talk with Kyler, and things seem like they're moving in a good direction." Kyler, a source close to Kyler came out and said, "Yeah, that ain't happened. I haven't talked to anybody since the season ended," type of thing. Now news is coming out saying that the Cardinals have informed Kyler that if they aren't able to make a trade between now and the start of the league year, he'll be released. So be a free agent at that point going into free agency as well. So interesting to see how that one kind of looks and works. And that's the thing that I guess I've yet to understand with some of the NFL side of things, right? The NFL comes out and says, "Hey, if we can't make a trade for this guy, we're just going to release him." Like, if you're an opposing team looking to acquire said player, why in the world would you go out and make a trade for the guy if you know the team's just going to release him anyway? You can get him at such a better deal, because the Cardinals essentially are going to pay Kyler to play for somebody else this year, right? He's got, I think, 37 million guaranteed on the contract. So you can accept a league minimum deal somewhere else and go play against your former team.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's them. Like, okay, so instead of taking the bidding war in free agency, you at least get some sort of an offer. But again, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, at that point, what to do? It does lower the offers, but is someone offering a third this year and a third next year? I mean, that's kind of a slap in the face, right? But if that's the best offer do you take it?
Right. Well,
But
and if I'm the
the same thing with
opposing,
these teams, why bother? Because if I get him, if I can get him off of free agency for anything that resembles a discount, knowing that the Cardinals are footing the bill for the bulk of his salary and he's still going to be happy, like, well, let's try it out for a year and let's see what that looks like, right? I mean, the Colts have to be hanging that over Daniel Jones' camp, right? In particular. Like, oh, well, Jones doesn't want it. Like, yeah, you guys can take that offer. That's fine because we're not going to pay you that. But hey, Kyler, why don't you come in here? We have a team that's, pretty established. We think we can make this offense work around you. Here are all these pieces for you. And, what do you say? So and that's just one instance. But,
right.
yeah, things are going to get silly around quarterbacks.
Mhm.
Kyler, Daniel Jones, obviously the Malik Willis,
Yep.
right? We're going to see kind of what that does. Geno's still floating around there. Kirk Cousins is getting released, so we'll see what the Kirk Cousins deal looks like. Like, I mean, there's teams in need of competent quarterback play. Colts, Jets, Vikings are the top 3 that come to mind. The
Val,
Cardinals
yep,
are, right? But
yep.
they're not bringing Kyler back, so then you're looking at something else. Um,
Right?
you
Is
so
Jacoby Brissett really your guy, or is that just what you had there, right? Like
yeah, he
certainly,
wasn't winning games. He just put up good numbers. Like we
right,
liked him for fantasy because it was the Jameis equivalent, right? Like we didn't
right,
get to see JMO, but we got Jacoby,
right,
and that worked. But yeah, I mean, uh, we'll see how much that one game did for Malik Willis, right? 155 career passing attempts, and this guy's going to be walking into a situation where he's probably going to be making more than $30 million a year, and has only thrown an NFL ball 155 times
right,
in a game.
right. It's that Matt Flynn,
Absolutely.
debacle kind of thing all over again, right? Like teams are going to overpay somewhere along the way to get a guy that had one or two decent games throughout the season, but just tells you where the market truly is. I'm interested to see if there's a team that decides to try and acquire Derek Carr or some of these other guys. We saw Phillip Rivers come back 5 years removed from the league to start and play games to finish off the season for the Colts last year, right? Like that should tell you just how diminished the quarterback landscape is. Right. So the teams that have their guy, then they've got their guy, and the teams that don't are desperately searching for that. And I do mean desperately.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the team we haven't even brought up is Miami.
Right.
They
That's
have
another
so much money dedicated to Tua. It sounds like they're going to be releasing him if the trade can't be found, is what the reports are. But I mean, then what do you do? I mean, $93 million cap hit or whatever the hell it is to get rid of Tua to try and start over as a last ditch effort to keep the fan base engaged before they completely implode on you. Like that's another team. So what, 5? We've listed off 5 teams. And we're going to see. Is it just rotating quarterbacks? Do some of these teams just say, screw it, we're going to take our chance in the draft? Right? Do the Dolphins, go after Ty Simpson in the second round? Right? Maybe they don't want him in the first. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's not 3 quarterbacks that go in the first round, but do they go in day 2 and go, like, all right, second round's what we're looking at here. So, Carson Beck, stay in Miami. Hey, this worked. Carson Beck
right.
doesn't go in the first round. Hey, you want to stay in South Beach? Here, help turn our franchise around. So,
Right.
plenty of storylines and options to pontificate on.
Out of the top 10 picks, what, we'll go to the top 11 because that I like that number better there. But the number 1 with Las Vegas, quarterback needy, likely, they'll likely take Mendoza. The Jets, number 2, kind of quarterback needy, right? Like they don't have they seemingly don't have their answer there. The Cardinals, I think they're letting their answer walk out the door. Tennessee, I think it's still a little too early to tell what they've got with Cam Ward, but they took him number 1 overall, so pretty sure that they're not going to make a move there, right? Jackson Dart with the Giants, who, they took him with the first round pick last year. The Browns have Shadur Sanders, have Deshaun Watson under contract. I don't know that they feel like they've got their answer quarterback there. Even though funny enough, they had 2 quarterbacks that were Pro Bowl quarterbacks this year that were on the roster last year. That just is a little prodded to how bad the Pro Bowl's gotten. But
Shadur was a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, so was Joe Flacco, who they felt so strong about that they traded him to an in-division rival.
Peanuts.
Yes, for peanuts. The Commanders have their guy, right, with Jaden Daniels. The Saints, I think the Saints are a team that we could say is looking for answers at the quarterback position still. Like Shuck,
I might disagree with you on that. I think Shuck played well enough that they're not going to even think about quarterback this year.
Okay. But
and maybe late, right? 4th, 5th, 6th round.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they bring a guy in just to kind of, always have a new guy in the building. But with their cap situation and how that team is set up, I would not tell you it's a top priority for them by any stretch.
You're probably right, but I guess the kind of the way that I look at that is Shook played correct. I think he played well enough to be the guy this year, but looking at it overall, I don't know that he's the guy 3 years from now on that roster, right? Like that's what that's what I mean by I don't think that they've necessarily found their answer at quarterback. Is they'll likely be another guy under center 2 to 3 years from now in New Orleans. So, Chiefs have their guy. Cincinnati has their guy. Dolphins at number 11. That seems like they don't have their guy, and they're still going to be looking. So, out of the top 11 picks, I mean, probably 6 of them are quarterback needy right there, and in a not so deep draft class, it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out.
Who's willing to maybe try and trade back, right? And see what that looks like. Honestly, I mean, you got to have a trade partner, but for some of those teams, right, because people aren't as high on it, like, let's, do we risk it, right? Are we trading away? We get extra picks, an extra pick this year, 2 extra picks next year for rebuilding. Most of those teams are. Kansas City, I would tell you, they're retooling, not rebuilding.
Right.
But they might be the exception there.
Right. They've gotten a little bit longer in the tooth, so it'll be interesting to see how they try and reload that. But yeah. And we did see some trades go down earlier as well, right? Mm-hmm. We saw David Montgomery leaving Detroit and headed to Texas. I feel like Detroit made out like bandits on that deal, right? Like, I think they certainly got the better end of the stick. You're talking about Houston that has a very porous offensive line, one of the worst, run games in the league. And David Montgomery is approaching that age 30 mark where you tend to see running backs just fall off a cliff. I don't know. What were your thoughts around that trade?
Yeah, I understand why Houston made the deal. I think it's interesting that they gave up an offensive lineman, and that was a position group of one of their worst position groups. And maybe that's why they felt like, look, like this clearly ain't working, so we might as well bring in a guy and see what we can do. But I think it speaks more to how the team felt about Woody Marks and what they're hearing from Joe Mixon's camp in his recovery than anything else. And you can bring Montgomery in, you can have him for the next couple of years under contract while you kind of try and figure out what's going on and you go from there. Because again, Houston's defense in 2025 was more than good enough to make a really strong playoff push.
Right.
Their offensive line led to a lot of problems, and quarterback has been interesting here the last 2 seasons. But I do think a lot of that does come from the offensive line woes. And if you can shore up one, maybe the other helps, but now you don't have to worry about running back in day 1 or day 2, right? Now you can focus on offensive line and trying to tool the line because Montgomery is going to be able to absorb 245 carries or 250 carries, something like that. Woody Marks can absorb another, 180 and kind of go from there. And if Joe Mixon comes back, then great. Then it's Mixon and Montgomery, and Woody Marks is fighting for scraps. But this way, they have weapons at receiver with Higgins and Collins and who's the other Iowa State guy they got? Doesn't matter. So the 2 Iowa State boys and Nico Collins, obviously you have a tight end and Dalton Schultz.
Mm-hmm.
You believe in CJ Stroud. You just need him to be a bit more efficient and not have those crucial turnovers. But now you can focus on your offensive line. Like, look, this is how we're going to make everybody else around you better, is because we are going to build a stone wall. And
Right.
that's where their focus has to be. And this is a good draft for that holistically. You can have a really strong draft class just by drafting in the trenches.
Right. Well, and then Houston turned around and also traded away Titus Howard off of their offensive line. The former first round pick for them to Cleveland as well, right? Got back a fifth round pick. So yeah, the Texans are going to have to really focus in on that on the offensive line during this free agency as well as this draft to kind of fill that in, because you just traded away kind of half of your starters on that one for a team that wasn't very good at that position to begin with, right? Like, this was a major weakness for this organization last year. So it'll be interesting to see how they try and adjust and retool that position this offseason. So
yeah,
it's always interesting when a team does something to seemingly create more questions for them at a position of question to begin with than answers on some of these. So it's very interesting to see how some of that looks and works. And I saw some folks out there going, well, they basically traded away, they traded away an offensive lineman for David Montgomery. And I'm like, well, they gave away more than that, because what you got back off of that Titus Howard deal was still not equivalent to what you gave up to go get him. And quite frankly, I don't know many teams out there that trade that decide to go a one for one trade for running back for an offensive lineman. They tend to not work out very well together there.
yeah. And there's some interesting options. Some of these guys are definitely older, but there's some definite options to help bolster your offensive line in the short run. Not necessarily long term, but you can help plug some holes here with some of these guys. Whether it's a Lindenbaum from Baltimore, like that one's. I mean, he's going to be hot to trot. But even a Aaliyah Vera Tucker from the Jets,
right?
Never panned out to be that first round pick, right?
Right.
But he is serviceable. Like, I think if you can get him in the right deal, I think he's a guy who could step in and do some good things. Dylan Parham from the Raiders, again, a little bit, he got injured a little bit, so I think that kind of diminished what he was able to do. But again, another decent offensive lineman that you can stick in there in the interior and help plug some holes and get better. And we'll see how that pans out there as far as the interior. Tackles where it's tough.
Right.
Like, you have a better time plugging interior guard center type position than you do tackle right now, because tackle's tough. Brendan Smith from Indianapolis, Rasheed Walker from Green Bay are kind of the top two. And then with the Chiefs cutting their tackle because it did not pan out. Why can I not think of his name now?
I want to say it was Johnson.
But I mean, those are kind of the top three headlines. But again, tackles come with a premium. Free agent tackles cost a lot of money, and they all know it.
Right.
So it's it'll be interesting. Again, this is all the fun stuff, right? Because you see what they're trying to do.
You had let's see. Graham Glasgow got released by Detroit, right? Like, could go down and you could see Dave Montgomery running behind Graham Glasgow again. It does look like Cornelius Lucas got released by Cleveland. Same thing with Calvin Anderson, got released by Pittsburgh. So there's some guys out there, as well as this draft class does have some guys in it. But it'll be interesting to see how some of these kind of look and work, and who ultimately goes after these guys and signs them and drafts them. So, alrighty. Any other news, notes, thoughts that you want to hit up here on some free agency type of stuff?
No, not anymore. Right. I think this is one of those kind of fun, open-ended topics, right? Like we could continue to go and just really get into the weeds, but I think for the sake of this show, we can um, call the
Shimmy
topic
along.
good for now. Yeah,
All
and
right.
then we'll move on to the next thing.
All right. So I do have a guess a player for you. You
Okay.
managed to get back in the win column last week with pulling out 2 in a row, and one of them very early on in the guessing. So we'll see how you do this week. All right. So this player had a top 15 positional finish. Is clue 1.
Wandell Robinson.
Close, or it's a good guess, but incorrect. They had 110 targets.
Um, 110 targets. Alec Pierce finished in the top 15 when it was all said and done with.
It is not Alec Pierce, but I
Okay.
like the thought.
Okay.
Alrighty. Sorry, my computer took a minute there. This player had double-digit touchdowns.
Ooh. Okay. Devontae Adams.
Oh, I like the guess, but not quite. This player had a yards per reception in kind of that 12 to 13 yards range. It was a very strong, efficient, but not an overly pure deep threat.
Parker Washington.
I like it, but that is incorrect.
Okay.
All right, the last one here. This player had over 1,400 receiving yards.
You didn't give me much to go off on here. Was it no, I don't think he had 1,400 yards. I'm gonna say what was his name? Wilson from the Cardinals, but I don't think it's him. I don't think he had enough yards.
It was not Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson had 1,006 yards on that,
Yeah. Okay.
and only 7 touchdowns. So,
Oh shoot! I thought he had 10. Okay, I thought he got to
alrighty,
double digits.
alrighty. So, last guess before I reveal. Out of clues. So, if you got one other guess,
Cutting through with guys, I feel like I know that that's not it. Um, yeah, I got nothing. I don't know.
alrighty. The answer was Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Oh, okay, that makes okay. That
I could have, it's one of those, could have upped that a little bit, but right, as far as the clues kind of fit there, right? First clue, top 15 finish. He was number 3 at the wide receiver position last year. 110 plus targets, had 172 targets last year. Had double-digit touchdowns, finished with 11 touchdowns through the air. Had that kind of wide, or that yards per reception in that 12 to 13 range. He was at 12 yards per reception exactly. And then the 1,400 yards, he finished at 1,401.
All right.
So that one I think was a little bit tougher because it could have fallen into a couple of different kind of categories there, and it made that a little bit tougher there. But glad to see.
It was a good one.
Glad I could see where I could redeem myself after the first guess. I don't even remember what it was, but you got it on like the very first guess that the clue was like finish a top 10 at his position or something like that.
Was it Gibbs? Was
Yeah,
it
it
his
was
teammate
Gibbs.
when you did Gibbs?
Yeah. So I had to see if I could stump you with the teammates. So
No, you did. You did. Good job.
all righty. Well, I believe that's going to take us down here to the end of it. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
Thanks for tuning in and checking it out. Please be sure to, go over to our YouTube page, hit like and subscribe. You can follow us anywhere you consume social media. But yeah, we're gonna continue to do this, right? As we inch closer to free agency, we'll start getting into some player breakdowns and we'll look at some rookie breakdowns as we get a little bit closer to the draft. We have a big we'll be with you for the entire first round of the draft, as we've done for the past 5 years.
It's been a few, yeah.
So, which is always that's always a fun night. I like doing that. But yeah, again, thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us here this evening, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their week.
Absolutely. That's going to do it for us tonight. Do appreciate everybody tuning in as well. Again, you can find us on all those socials at Good Old Boys FF. But yeah, that's going to do it for us. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.